as I said, you are somebody who has been encouraging women to stop being apologetic about wealth. And I was watching a recent interview of yours, and one of the things you said was that women, even the most progressive, exposed, empowered women, continue to be apologetic about wealth. Are you apologetic about wealth?
I think it's less about being apologetic about wealth, but being uncomfortable with money and your relationship with money and how you converse about it. So I think it's really about, if you look world over, not just in India, there is absolute research that for the same job, women are underpaid. Doesn't matter at which level they are. Yeah. And for self-advocacy to say, hey, but I deserve this, we are uncomfortable. And to be able to sort of be confident about how you not spend money. That's not what I'm talking about.
No.
Right?
About being economically independent. About
your financial literacy is not something that we take very seriously, you know. And we almost are unconsciously perhaps or unthinkingly very prepared to outsource it. My father, my brother, my husband, my son, whatever. And we just have a very uncomfortable relationship with money. And you asked me about that. I grew up in the same, cultural context. So I think it was very hard. It was undoing. And I don't know if I didn't spend the 20 years that I did in US before returning back, where I quickly learned if I didn't advocate for myself, then nobody else will, because the cultural upbringing was very different. The first time I had to face an appraisal, right? I think I was 23, and my boss said, you have to do your self-appraisal first. And it felt somehow wrong that I'm writing about myself. I did this, I did this, I did this. So I didn't even submit a self-appraisal. And I didn't get much of a raise. And that woke me up to say how much it's important to have advocacy for yourself in a way that's authentic. It doesn't have to be in a way that, everybody starts rolling their eyes the moment you start talking about yourself. But there is nothing wrong in being authentic and advocating what you do deserve. And I think we don't do that enough in partnership, at work, at home, everywhere.
Vidya Balan was on stage earlier and she said, it's so strange, but women have a problem receiving success. So even when you get success, you're somehow trying to be nice about it. And that's what I meant, that the awkwardness with money is you think somebody else will do the conversation about money for you. Oh, my work will speak for itself. Or maybe somebody else can.
Exactly.
Did you go through those hurdles before you became who you are?
Of course. I grew up in the same India that everybody else grew up in, and I don't think it's even just India. I think there is just a deeper conditioning coming out of a good place, probably coming out of love at home where, it's okay, you want to pamper your daughter a little more, you want to protect your daughter a little more, and those subtle conditionings do have that impact. Although my father was quite progressive, I would receive allowance every week, and every month, and I had to handle my school expenses, my bus pass, and all of those things myself. So I kind of knew that, but I don't think I could have asked him, but why am I getting this much and not more, right? So that advocacy was not there, and that's something I had to learn.
But how did an engineering student from Hyderabad, you later go on to study science, you spent 22 years in the United States of America. How did that girl become this woman? You could have become an engineer. That didn't happen to you.
No, I am an engineer.
You are trained to be an engineer.
Think of myself as an engineer.
No,
I like being an engineer.
You know what I mean. You know what I'm asking.
No, I know what you mean. But I think sometimes one of the things I worry about, I mentioned how I have two daughters, they're probably Navya's age, plus or minus. But what I worry about them is today, them, not just as a girl or a boy, they expect so much out of life, like here and now. And they subject themselves to not just burnout, but so much more stress, I feel. There is there is life that unfolds step by step, and you have to let that happen. and it can take you to places. You know, you can't script your entire life. I think every decade of my life, I feel like I've had situations where I had to be in very uncomfortable zones by choice or by situations. And unless you put yourself into uncomfortable places, you don't have growth, right? So I could have been a good engineer, but I realized that I had so many more interests, and I wanted to find a way I combined that. I grew up in Hyderabad, which then was more provincial, not so cosmopolitan, was a smaller city at that time. And, but I realized that in my family, business was a bad word, okay?
And why was that? It was a typical middle class.
Yeah, typical middle class.
Yeah.
My father was a government employee, and his ambition for me was that I would work in a public service unit.
Sure.
You know, when after graduating from engineering, I didn't want to go to any of the jobs I had gotten. He was baffled, but he was also always, his love allowed him to let me do what I wanted to do. So I wanted to kind of work in private sector, which wasn't for him the thing at that time. So anyway, and I went to US. They didn't know a single person in US. We didn't have a 10th cousin even living there. To just send away your daughter, I was 20. You know, I just look back and say, would I be such a, I don't know, progressive or naive, or what I should say, parent, to send them away, you know. I mean, of course, my children went there to study, but it's a different time right now than it was back then, you know. And but they let me go do that. It led me to Silicon Valley, where there was so much entrepreneurship around.
Yeah.
I got a lot of mentoring. When I went to our CEO with an idea, which I thought would be a product for our company, he said, I don't think we are ready for it, but you should go start it and I'll mentor you. That kind of mentoring is usually not that easily available, where someone says, you go do it, and why not? And it actually started the wheels turning, because I hadn't seen myself as an entrepreneur. Going to engineering school here, I don't think we knew how to spell it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody spoke about it,
yeah.
you know. And like I said, business had a little bit of an unsavory association,
sure.
By and large, the notion that you had to do something wrong to make money, because that's also some of the relationship with money, right? But because I was in the valley, it helped me to become that, and then that led one thing to another. In 2005, I was back on a visit to India, and something India kept calling. I hadn't been, I mean, I had visited, of course, many times, but I hadn't spent serious time in India.
And you came back after 22 years.
Huh?
You came back after 22 years.
Yeah, I came back after 22 years, and it was a different India. You know, it was this young, confident India where anything was possible. And I left a very timid, at least that's how I saw it, right?
Yeah.
And grateful for the opportunities that you got, but not so much demanding, you know, I have so much more I can do. And this India really, you know, excited me. And it was again putting yourself into an uncomfortable zone, because you pick your family and, you know, transplant them, right? And you don't know, I had never worked in India. You don't know if you'll succeed or not, right?
Yeah.
India had become smaller for me because I'd been gone for so long, my family, but that's about it, right?
Yeah.
So then to say I'll come here and I'll do something, but you have to put yourself into uncomfortable places. You might fail, but for every 8 times you will fail, 2 times you will have phenomenal success, and you owe that to yourself. So to be able to put yourself in situations where you might fail, I think that's important, that you pursue that.
Now, I know a lot of you will have questions. I can already see hands. Ranjana, I can see you there. Why don't we start with you? Come. Just come up on stage. That's easier than finding the ushers at this point. Yeah. Come.
so much, Barkha. Thanks, Barkha. Thank you very much, ma'am, for giving your insights. I have a similar story. Like, I studied in the US, and my parents sent me when I was the only Indian girl in my university at University of New Haven. But I came back and worked in TCS and Wipro for 28 years, so I didn't sort of be there for a long time. But when you said about money, that's very true, and I'll tell to the young women out here also that women have a different equation with money. Okay, like for example, I was handling a $400 million P&L, but my wealth advisor would come and ask me that, is your husband not going to be around when you are discussing this? And I said, it's my money. I think I know how to handle my finances. So, but they would...
you are very few. Most people would not do that. Most women would not do that.
Okay, I learned it later that that's the way it goes. So... Yeah. So I just wanted to tell all the women, and like Barkha is such a, such a strong woman whom I really admire.
Thank you.
She's one of my greatest mentors that I can talk about. And unless we women come and break those barriers, it is never going to change. You have to raise your sons as daughters as sons, sons as daughters. If you're not, you're doing that differently, it's never going to change. I think.
So let me ask you, you're a mom, thanks Ranjana, you're a mom to 2 daughters. Did you feel like you wanted for them to have some freedoms that because it was a different time, despite your parents being progressive, you couldn't have because, girls just didn't have that kind of freedom at that time. Has that impacted your parenting?
First of all, I had a lot of freedom from my father. He just always said, I've taught you everything I know. He was a very simple man. So I think many complexities were beyond his comprehension. So he said, I've taught you everything I know, my values, and I trust you. There's no bigger responsibility than trust, And so it was easy for him to give freedoms. He never questioned. I said, I'm going to this debating competition, or there is a school event, we have to go out of town or whatever. He didn't double check. In some ways, I look back and I say, I think I would have been, because I feel like I know more of the world or whatever it is, to let my children go that way. As much as he gave me freedom to do, I think I was 13, there was a huge cyclone. My school was organizing this relief, and he let me go alone for that with the school, right? Wow. I don't know if I would have, I gave those freedoms, but there are many other kinds of freedoms, okay? I think today the opportunity is more. I think my children, by nature of where we are in the world today, they have far more opportunity they can pursue, and they also have a different safety net, right? So I think it gives them the freedom to do far more with their life than my mind allowed me to do. I probably had the same freedoms, but I don't think I had the exposure or the confidence to go do that.
I don't know how many people know, but you're also a trekker, a mountain climber. Is that a kind of metaphor for all the mountains you've climbed? I mean, I know you actually climb mountains, but how did you get into that? And is there something about that adventure, the need for adventure, the risk-taking, that actually there's a correlation with, betting on companies?
I think there is a strong correlation. I like nature. I like being out in nature a lot. That's sort of my therapy, if you will, right? But when you want to do but I'm not an athletic person because, again, growing up, PT period in school was sitting under the mango tree and chatting with your friends. That's what we did in PT period. The once in a week PT period we had. So there was no conscious understanding of physical fitness when I grew up, which, by the way, isn't the case for my children, right? They have had lots of exposure to athletics and so forth. But so when I started, and my love for nature, fortunately my husband also shares that. So we, from a long time, from a very young age, did a lot of trekking, lot of backpacking and things like that. But the more difficult things that I've done, like marathons and all that, was really metaphor for setting some unachievable goals, or what feels a bit unachievable today, but working on that step by step, having a plan to get there. I think when you do that in any aspect of your life, it changes you to be less afraid, and it allows you to be more willing to go after your goals and be more willing to sometimes have setbacks, because you don't always get there when you want to get there. You may get there a second time or a third time, but I think it does allow you to kind of work on things which don't have a guarantee of success. And sometimes we are looking for those guarantees, and there's no such thing in life. The best things come without, you know, a warranty of outcome.
Now, finally, Vani, the CXXO forum that Kalari Capital is not just backing but promoting. What made you do this? Because, you know, in a way, there's so much talk about how to get more women in the boardroom. Diversity and inclusions are slogans in every company. Why the CXXO forum?
So, I mean, what do I do 50 hours, 60 hours a week? We are looking at very young tech companies, entrepreneurs with ideas, and how they're going to transform the world with technology. That's the work I do, and hence the engineering part of me is, or the technologist part of me is very much alive. Obviously, the ideas have to translate into meaningful businesses. We do that. We actually released a report yesterday, which is on our website, so on the CXXO website also. But you know, of course, everybody knows Startup Nation, Unicorn, everyone knows these words by now. The billions of dollars of venture capital funding that have gone into these tech companies. Kalari Capital, early stage venture capital fund that I founded in India and run, does the same thing. But in India, and these numbers, by the way, when I say India, they are very similar world over. So it's not that I'm putting a spotlight on India. 9% of venture capital funded companies have a women co-founder. But when you talk about the women being the CEO, as a founder CEO, that's less than 2% of the company.
That's it.
That's it. Now, when I went to engineering, I was one among 7 girls, okay, in the whole batch. So, but today there are enough girls in engineering. So we've come a long way in that. But why hasn't that number from literacy, I mean, we are just talking microcosm of technology companies, why hasn't that number changed at all, right? And we have to ask ourselves that question. Is there a bias in funding? Maybe not conscious bias. Most biases, in fact, are not conscious. I don't feel I have experienced conscious bias, but have I experienced plenty of unconscious stereotyping? Of course, every woman does, I think, if you are trying to do something besides the conventional. So, you know, it's a statistic that just kept bothering me, and I'm tired of, oh, what can we do, what can we do? I don't know what we can do, but let's do something, right? If we all do just something, like you're doing here, we women, and we don't know the ripple effect of it. There's a girl sitting there, you know, at 16 or whatever, and 20 years from now, she may be running the most powerful company. We don't know that today. So we create those ripples, right? So what can we do? So we pledged to fund women. We pledged $10 million, 80 crores or whatever per year to fund women-founded companies. So obviously, they are and have to be technology companies, because that's what we know, where we can help, where we can mentor. And also, we wanted to create a community for these women, because I know how much I struggled asking my board when I was a CEO even for a raise. I felt like I was cheapening myself. I'm not, but you know, just to even ask that. But after 3 years of nobody giving me a raise, I said, oh, I better go ask, you know. You take care of everyone, but who takes care of you?
Yourself, absolutely.
Yeah, you have to take care of yourself, right? So that's very important. It's important at home also, right? You do everything for everyone, but you know,
and we never talk about equality at home. We keep talking about equality at work, but equality at home is as important.
You know, long ago I solved that by making sure I had people who really care about taking care of me and not worrying too much about this, you know, 50-50 or whatever. So, but that's a whole different topic for another time. But I think from a CXXO, I thought we need to build a community where you can ask the difficult questions. How do I handle this? How do I handle that? And so forth. So our goal was to say, even if we can, our firm can fund 10 women a year 10 years, that's 100 women. And if, 20 other firms, and there are at least 20 firms of our size in India, did the same, I don't think a decade from now, this conversation here on this table with you, Barkha, will be very different.
Yes.
Yes. So that's why I thought the best thing is you do action, whatever you can. And we all have agency to do something. And that at least we must do. And I feel a bigger calling at my age to do that. Otherwise you look back and say, was it just all about me or did I give back anything?
Fantastic. Thank you. Let's put our hands together for Vani. Before we let you go, Vani, we've been having these awards all day. You just gave one to Navya. From our side, we would like to felicitate you. We can have the Her Award here. And I'd like to call on stage MVS of Federal Bank, the Chief Marketing Officer, MVS Murthy. Can we have you on stage? Can we have Mr. Murthy on stage? Is he? And there you are. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And can we have the award? Yes. And so, something very interesting about their bank, which I recently discovered, is 43% employees are women.
Yeah, so, before I respond to what you're saying, I just want to draw your attention to a very, very important thing. Between Vani, Lakshmi, Ratna, Alpana, who are sitting here, while we are talking of breaking the glass ceiling, they are the ones who are creating the glass ceilings and they handle billions of dollars of money. So I don't think we should ever be thinking that is it so much of an effort for women. They are here, they are testimony of the fact that they're really rocking it. So that's one. Second is to your question. So when we say 42%, 42% is not a statistic. Okay, there are women who have joined us as probationary officers. They would have joined us as clerks. And then from there, they went on to get married. They've had babies, they've taken care of their in-laws, they've taken care of their aging parents, they've risen up the hierarchy, and that is the significance of that 42% number. And I'm absolutely proud to tell you that there has never been an effort to create a workplace in Federal Bank which is, there is an effort to make it gender neutral or gender centric, but it has happened naturally. And we are super proud. I mean, when I look at 4 of them, they are really raising the bar, Vinci, Alpana, Ratna and Sabina. So it's just, I just thought I'll bring this to you.
And if you'd like to say anything to Vani and presenting her this award, and then we'll let her go.
No, so Vani, I must confess that I have been a failed entrepreneur myself, and one of the VCs we pitched to was Kalari Capital. But it's okay. If that wouldn't have happened, this wouldn't have happened. So it's all in good humor.
Thank you so much, Vani, and thank you. And thank you for being part of this festival. Come, ma'am.